Hello everyone, welcome to another Bitcoin related tutorial. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build a DIY Start9 server for about $275. I recently saw a video by Bitcoin Not Crypto. It's a really good video, I'll link it in the description, where he showed how to build a server for $300. But there was one slight concern that you may have with that particular setup, which is that it only comes with 1 terabyte of storage. Now 1 terabyte of storage is fine if you're only using your server for a Bitcoin node. But once you install Bitcoin Knots, have it fully synced, you install Electors, have it fully indexed, and put mempool, maybe a couple other services on there, you're going to be really close to that 1 terabyte mark. And obviously the blockchain grows over time, so it will eventually fill up that 1 terabyte of storage. And if you're using your server for anything besides Bitcoin, it's going to fill it up very quickly. So what I wanted to do was come up with a device that has a similar price range, but that has 2 terabytes of storage. So the device that I've come up with is the GMKTec G3. It's the N150 Nucbox. You can get this device bare bones for $116. You have to add the RAM and the storage to it, and the total comes to $275. I included $3 for an Ethernet cable as well, because you need to connect your server up to the Ethernet. And I think a lot of people probably don't have the Ethernet cable because they connect their devices to their router wirelessly primarily. So I included the price of the Ethernet cable in there. It comes to $275. Now I did make a trade-off in order to keep it below $300, which is the DreamQuest N150 that Bitcoin Not Crypto links to. It comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I moved the RAM on this setup down to 16 gigabytes to keep it under the $300. Now you can get 32 gigabytes of RAM, and that's about $94 for 32 gigabytes of RAM, as opposed to $39 for 16 gigabytes of RAM. And of course that means then that if you put 32 gigabytes of RAM, it's going to cost you about $330 for the total setup, which is still cheaper than if you were to upgrade the N150 1 terabyte drive to a 2 terabyte. That's going to cost you around $100. So this is $30 more than the DreamQuest N150 if you have the same amount of RAM, as opposed to $100 if you were to upgrade the DreamQuest N150. The other slight difference is the GMKTec G3. It has the N100 chip in it. That's a 4-core 3.4 gigahertz, and the DreamQuest N150 has the Intel N150 chip in it, which is a 4-core 3.6 gigahertz. So same number of cores, 0.2 gigahertz less on the GMKTec G3. So that's really the main trade-off we're making. There's technically also a trade-off in that we have to do a little more work, which is we have to install the RAM in the NVMe drive, whereas with you get the DreamQuest N150, you just plug it in and install StartOS. But I chose this device because it's very easy to upgrade. I believe anybody can upgrade. Now if you do, for the few people who probably can't upgrade due to maybe you got some neurological concerns or maybe some physical limitations, you almost certainly are going to know somebody that can actually do this for you, and it's very easy. In fact, after I go through the demonstration of how to set it up, I'm going to show you, I'm going to time myself doing it. I'm not going to be rushing, I'm not going to be, racing to see how fast I can do it. I'm just going to do it at a normal pace without the descriptions, and I'll show you that we can do it with, we can build this device in under a minute. So it's very simple to do. Quick clarification on the price of the DreamQuest N150. $300 is for the variant that has 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. There is, however, another variant for $200 that has 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is the amount of RAM that we're going to have in our GMKTec G3. And it has a 512 gigabyte SSD, but you can upgrade the 512 gigabyte SSD to a 2 terabyte for about $100. This one here is probably the least expensive Gen 4 2 terabyte NVMe you can get. And so you could build a variant with 2 terabytes of storage space for $300 of the DreamQuest N150. So you could go that route. However, I still would recommend the GMKTec G3 if you're not a very technical person, because the way you would have to upgrade the storage space on the DreamQuest is there are 4 feet at the bottom here. You have to remove a screw from each of the 4 feet, which allows that bottom plate to come off, and that bottom plate is attached to the motherboard with a SATA ribbon cable, so you have to be careful not to break that when you do the upgrade. So I would recommend not going that route unless you have unless you're a little more comfortable with DIY projects like this. But if you're not a very technically savvy person, then I would go with the GMKTec G3, just because it's a lot easier to actually initially set this one up with the 2 terabytes than it would be to upgrade the DreamQuest N150 with a 2 terabyte NVMe. Okay, so here are the parts we're going to use to build our server. We have the GMKTec G3 N100 Nucbox. This particular MiniPC is the barebones version, and it costs $116. It comes with the power supply as well as some hardware. It has a HDMI cable, which we're not going to need, as well as a bracket that you can use to hang it if you wanted to hang your MiniPC up. Otherwise, you can just set it on the table like this, and then you won't need the bracket. Okay, since this is the bare bones model, it does not come with any RAM or storage, so we're going to be adding those in. So for the RAM today, I'm using this ATEC 16 gigabyte module, DDR4, 2666 megahertz. This particular module runs $39. If you want to double the RAM, you can also go with a 32 gigabyte module. And this particular one is probably your cheapest option. This is the ATEC 32 gigabyte DDR4 3200 megahertz. Okay, so this one is not only double, but it's a little bit faster, the speed. And I've tested this one, so I know this one works as well on the G3. One thing that you should avoid though is the ATEC, specifically this brand, the ATEC 16 gigabyte DDR4 3200 megahertz. According to the specs for the G3, this should work, so maybe if you were to upgrade the BIOS or something it would work, but I've tested 2 different RAM sticks that I have that are this model, and neither of them work. So I would avoid this one. I will post in the description some other brands that are 16 gigabyte 3200 megahertz if you want to go with a little bit faster RAM stick. Otherwise, if you want to just follow what I'm doing in this video, then just get the ATEC 16 gigabyte 2666 megahertz, and I'll post a link to all of these if you want to build exactly what I'm building here. Okay, so to open the RAM stick, it has a sticker that goes all the way around. You'll just cut it on the edges so that you can pull the lid off of the tray. So this just separates like that, and then your RAM stick is sitting here in this tray like this. Okay, this RAM stick, like I mentioned, is $39. If you go with the 32 gigabyte module, this one will run you $94. Okay, so besides the RAM, we need to add some storage. So we're going to be adding this 2 terabyte NVMe drive. It's called Jupiter. I like this particular model for a couple of reasons. One is it comes with this screwdriver. This is a magnetic screwdriver. You'll need it to put in the screw that holds the storage in place. And this particular screwdriver is perfect for that. It's magnetic, so if you drop the screw, you can pick it up with a screwdriver, so it's really nice. The other thing I like about this particular one is it comes with a heatsink already installed. So if you were to get a different drive that didn't have a heatsink, you'd have to buy the heatsink separately and install it, which is a little more work. So it's nice just to have this, and you can just plug it in, put in the screw, and you're done. So that's why I recommend this particular model. I'll just set this like this. So we've got our tray for our RAM, we've got our tray for our NVMe with our screwdriver in there. This particular one runs $117. And then the next thing we're going to need is an Ethernet cable, because the GMKTec G3 barebones does not come with an Ethernet cable. You'll have to buy one separately. This is a Cat 7. This one costs $3. And I'll post a link to this one. And the last thing you're going to need is a USB thumb drive. I did not include this in the price total because I assume most people have one of these, but if you don't, you'll need to get one. And it doesn't have to be a big one. You know, you could probably get an 8 gigabyte. It'll work just fine. This is a SanDisk 32 gigabyte I'm going to be using. That's just one that I had, so that's what I'll be doing for that. Alright, so let's show how to actually build this thing. So first of all, what you're going to do is you're going to need to open up your MiniPC. And the reason I picked this model is because it's so easy to take apart. You basically just pull the top off. You don't need any special tools. Lid just comes off. And now the good thing also about the lid is it'll go on backwards just fine. So when you get it, it has the power button and the words are like this, but you could actually turn this around and the lid will go on this way. So maybe if you were hanging it and you wanted the power button to be up, you could still have your words facing the right direction. So that's kind of nice. The only thing you can't do is you can't put the lid on sideways because it's not a perfect square. So you can see it doesn't quite fit if you put it the other way. So you won't be able to put it on sideways, but you can put it on the way it came, with the words sort of down being toward the power button, or the other way around, where down is toward the ports on the back. So either way, the lid will go back on like that. So once you got your lid off, you're going to sort of notice that all the parts, they got like your battery and your radios and stuff all on one side, and then there's sort of this clear area on this side. This clear area is where the RAM's going to go, and it goes down into this socket down here. So what we'll do is we'll take out our RAM out of our tray, okay, and we'll stick it down into that socket. Now the good thing about DDR4, and I think all RAM sticks are like this, they have a notch in them, and it only allows you to put it in one direction. So if you had it the wrong way, like say you had it like this and you try to put it in there, you can see that the notch on the RAM stick does not match up with the notch in the port, and so it won't go in that way. So if you get it like that, you just turn it around, stick it in the correct way, okay? Make sure it goes down into the socket and then push it back, and that's it. So you don't need any tools to get the RAM in. You just put down the socket, push it back. Okay, so that's it for the RAM. Next we're going to add the storage, the NVMe drive, and it goes right on top of this, the battery and the radio. There's this little screw up here in the top right corner. This screw is the one that holds it in. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screwdriver. What we're going to do is put the screwdriver into the top of that screw so it catches, and then we're going to turn it counterclockwise. So the opposite direction that a clock turns, that's where we're going to turn it to pull it out. You just turn it for a while and it'll come out. And like I said, the good thing about this screwdriver is that it's magnetic, so the screw will stick to it. Now if you drop it down in there, you know, on your way out, it doesn't, you know, drops in there, you can just put your screwdriver in and pick it up. That's what's good about having the magnetic. Okay, so you're just going to set that screw aside. And then you're going to take your NVMe drive out of the package. And just sort of like with the RAM, we've got this little notch in the bottom that's going to tell us which way it needs to go. So if you look in the MiniPC, the port at the bottom there, it's got a notch to the left. The notch is to the left, so whenever we get our NVMe drive, we're going to put in where the notch is to the left. If we had it the other way where the notch is to the right, it's not going to go in. So we'll just turn it around and get it so it's facing the right direction. And we'll just put it down into that socket just like we do with the RAM. Make sure it's down in there. And then push it back just like we do with the RAM. Unfortunately with the NVMe, it doesn't just snap into place. We have to put that screw in. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the screw. And this is probably the most difficult part. If you have a little problem with fine motor control, you might get someone to help you with this. But basically what you want to do is put the screw onto the end of the screwdriver using the magnetic properties of the screwdriver to hold it in place. And then we're just going to put it into the hole and turn it clockwise. So we're turning it now this way, which is the direction a clock turns. to tighten it. Now we're not putting it in tight, we're just going to turn it until it stops turning, and that's it. That'll hold it in place. That's all you need. It doesn't need to be in there tight, otherwise you'll have trouble getting it out if you ever need to change it. So just turn it until it stops, until the screwdriver stops turning. Okay, and that's it for the storage. So we've got our RAM and our storage in, and now we just need to cover our server back up. Put the lid back on, and it snaps into place. And that's it. Okay, just to underscore how easy this really is to build, I'm going to go ahead and build it again without the instructions on each step. And I'm going to time myself, and I'm going to see how long it takes. So I'll go ahead and start the stopwatch and begin building the server. Alright, so about 42 seconds. So yeah, I believe anybody can build this, and if you have maybe an issue with fine motor control, particularly for the part where you put the screw in, you probably know somebody that can help you out with the parts that you have trouble with, but I think most people can do this no problem. Okay, now that we've assembled the server, the next thing we need to do is install the Start9 operating system. For that, we're going to use a program called Balena Etcher. This can be downloaded from etcher.balena.io is the name of the website. You'll click on Download Etcher. The reason I'm using Balena Etcher is because it looks the same on Windows, Mac, and Linux, so you'll be able to follow along whatever your operating system is. I've already downloaded and installed it, but you would download the version that you need here, and then install it, and then move on to the next step. The next thing you need to get is the Start9 operating system ISO file. And for that, you're going to search for Start9 GitHub, GITHUB. Okay, and then here we're going to go to this one that's on github.com. It says a link to Start9. And then we're going to go to repositories, and we're going to click on StartOS. Okay, so take note of the URL here. It's github.com/start9labs/startos. Now we're going to click on the latest release. At the time of this video, it's v0.3.5.1. We're just going to click on that link there. And now we're going to scroll down to the assets. And what we want to download is this one called StartOS 0.3.5.1. Has a bunch of numbers. x86_64.iso. Okay, this is the one we want to download right here. Now if you have a different version, it'll have a different version number and letters here, but it needs to end in x8664.iso like this one. So we're going to click on that to download it. And we'll just wait for that to finish downloading. Okay, that is finished downloading. Okay, for our next step, we're going to take our USB thumb drive and plug it in. If anything pops up, go ahead and close it. And then we're going to launch Balena Etcher. Okay, we're going to select Flash from File. And they're going to go to that ISO file that you downloaded. It should be in your Downloads folder. Click on Select. Then we're going to select our USB thumb drive for the target. There it is there. And then I'm going to click on Flash. It may require you to put in your password. And then we'll just wait for it to finish flashing StartOS onto the USB thumb drive. Once it finishes flashing, it'll go through a validation step, as you can see here. So we'll just wait for that to finish. Okay, once flashing is complete, you can go ahead and shut down Balena Etcher. And then whichever way your operating system works, you'll need to safely remove your USB thumb drive. Okay, now that we've got the Start9 operating system flashed onto our USB thumb drive, we're going to go ahead and hook everything up on the server and install the operating system. Alright, for this we're going to take our MiniPC. We're going to take the sticker off the back that's blocking the Ethernet port. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then we're going to plug the Ethernet cable into the port. The other end of this needs to go to your router, the one that you're going to be connecting whatever system you're going to be using to interface with your server. So that could be your PC or that could be your phone. So this one side of the cord goes to the server, one side of the cord goes to your router. Okay. Then we're going to take the power cord. It's plugged into the wall. We're going to go ahead and plug that into the back of the server. Okay. And then we're going to take the USB thumb drive and we're going to plug it into one of the ports. Okay, and this is pretty much all we need to plug in. We need the Ethernet cable plugged into the server and the other into the router, the power cord plugged into the MiniPC and also plugged into the wall, and then the USB thumb drive plugged into one of the ports. And now we're going to turn our server on, and we'll just wait a couple of minutes for it to boot up and connect to the network. Now that we've waited a couple minutes for our server to connect to the network, we're going to launch the browser. And we're going to type in http://start.local. Now you'll need to do this from a computer that is hooked up to the same router that your server is connected to. It may be connected either via the Ethernet port like I have here, or it could be through the Wi-Fi. You can also do this from your phone as long as you're just connected to the same network as your server. Alright, so we're going to hit enter to load that. Okay, now if the page doesn't load, just give it a couple more minutes and then refresh, and it should eventually show this page that looks like this here. Okay, so it's going to ask you where to install Start9 operating system to, and basically you're just selecting a disk. So there's only one disk in there, which is that 2 terabyte NVMe drive. So we're going to click on that. And then we'll have the option to install StartOS, which we'll click on that. It says it's going to completely erase the disk, which is fine because it's a new empty disk. And now we just wait for the installation to complete. Okay, once the installation is complete, it'll say it is successful, and it'll tell you to remove the USB stick and reboot your device. So we're going to go ahead and remove the USB stick. And then we'll click on reboot. It says please wait for StartOS to restart and then refresh this page. And we'll click on OK. Now we're going to give it a couple of minutes to reboot. Okay, once it's had a chance to reboot, we're going to go ahead and click on refresh. Okay, at this point our server is exactly the same state that you would get a server if you bought one off of the Start9 store. You know, the server 1 or the server pure. It would come just like this. When you plug it in, you go to start.local and it would have this menu here. Alright, so we're going to do the initial setup. We just click on Start Fresh. We select the NVMe drive again. Okay, now it asks you to create a master password. Now be sure to make this something that you can remember, write it down, save it somewhere, because if you lose this password, you're going to lose access to your server. Okay, now it's going to finish setting up the server. Okay, and once it's completed, you're going to just follow the instructions on the screen. The first step is to download address information. It says that start.local was for setup purposes only it will no longer work. What it's going to do is it's going to give your server a unique name. Now it's going to be, mine that I'm going to show here is going to be different than yours. It's going to come up with its own unique name. So we'll click on download. Okay, so this is the address information. What this does is it tells you the name of your server. So if you ever forget what it is, you can come back here and see what it is. It also gives you links to the instructions for downloading your certificate and so on. We don't actually need this right now though, because we're just going to move to the next step. This has all the instructions here. So during setup, you can click on this to get to the instructions and to your certificate. But if you ever need to come back later and read the instructions, that file you downloaded is the one you'll open up for that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on this second option here. Okay, this gives us a set of instructions that we're going to do to trust our certificate and make sure we can load our server in a secure way. Okay, the first step is to bookmark this page. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to call it unused Bronco. That's the name that it gave my server, so I'm going to call it that. You call it whatever. You call it StartOS or Start9 or whatever you want to call it. So you hit done. Then it says we need to download our server's root certificate, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. If it gives you a security warning, tell it you want to keep the file. Certificates it considers to be a dangerous type of file, so it might warn you about downloading it. Just tell it you want to download it. Okay, the next step is to view the instructions. We'll click on that. Here's the instructions for trusting your root certificate. So you want to download it, which we just did. That's the unused bronco.cert. Yours will be named something else, whatever the name of your server is. So this tells you different ways you can download it. We've already got it downloaded, so we'll go ahead and skip ahead. Next, we want to go to trusting. Okay, now they have instructions for all the different operating systems that you might be reading this from. A lot of you will probably be on Windows, maybe you're on Android or iOS. You'll click on whichever one you're on. Okay, now I've completed those steps. It says if you're using Firefox, complete this final step. I'm on Chrome, so it says if you're using Chrome or Brave, complete this final step. So I'm going to click on that. It says to go to this in Chrome. So we're going to go to that URL. Then it says import, and then select your certificate and trust this certificate. Okay, so it says select the authorities tab, select import. Okay, it's a little different. I think Chrome has changed since the instructions. Basically, I need to be on local certificates, and then under custom we have installed by you, and then we're going to click on import by trusted certificates, and then I'm going to import the certificate that I downloaded, and that should do it. Okay, next it says to test by refreshing, so I'm going to click on refresh. It says your certificate has been trusted. Okay, like I said, the instructions will be different on every operating system, so make sure you follow the instructions for your particular operating system. But you should get to this screen here once you get through the instructions. So here we'll click on go to login. Now we'll put in our password that we created earlier. Okay, and now at this point we can begin installing services on our server. Probably the very first one I'm going to install is Bitcoin Knots. So we'll go to Marketplace. Bitcoin Knots is in the community registry at the time of this video. It may be in the Start9 registry in a future release, but at the moment it's in the community registry, so we'll click on the change button underneath the registry. And we'll click on community registry, and then we click connect. And here we will click on the Bitcoin tab, and there it is, Bitcoin Knots. So we will install that. Now we can click on view install to see sort of the progress of it downloading and installing it. Okay, the very first thing you do with Bitcoin Knots before you run it is configure it. So click on configure. And I usually keep the default settings because they're very good at filtering out spam. There is one additional setting that I usually set as well. It's under mempool, and it's called reject tokens. This will reject the runes, which I consider to be spam as well. It's non-monetary. So I filter those out, but you don't necessarily have to enable that. If you just use the default settings, it'll filter out things like inscriptions and large op returns and so on. So you can just leave the default, but if you want to also filter out runes, make sure you click on reject tokens as well. So we're going to click on save, and now we click on start. Okay, and the very first thing Bitcoin Knots does when you first install it is it needs to verify the blockchain. So you can see here it says syncing blockchain, and it'll show you the progress. This number will start going up once it connects to a few peers, and it'll take about a day to get through this process. Okay, so we're going to wait for the initial blockchain download to complete, and then we'll come back and show what to do next. Okay, it's been a few hours and Bitcoin Knots has finished the initial blockchain download. Next we can check to make sure that our node is reachable, so we know that we're being counted on the dashboards as a node that is running Bitcoin Knots. For that we can go to the interfaces, and here under machine interfaces we have one called peer interface, and it has this Tor address. What you're going to do is you're going to copy this Tor address. They have a little copy button over here. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to go to a website called bitnodes.io. Okay, and from here we're going to scroll down to where it says join the network, and it has this IP address here. We're going to erase that IP address, and we're going to paste in the value that we copied. Now, one thing you have to do before you click on check node is you have to remove this http:// from the very beginning. See this part here, http://. We're just going to delete that. We want just where it starts having these random letters and it ends in .onion. So here we're going to click on check node, and you can see that we are reachable and we are reporting that we're running Bitcoin Knots. Okay. Some other things that you can do at this point, if you're going to be connecting Sparrow up to your server, you're going to want a service over on the Start9 registry. So we're going to click on Marketplace and then hit change to go back to the Start9 registry. Okay, and then in the Start9 registry, we're going to go to Bitcoin, and we're going to install Electris. This is the service that Sparrow will connect to on your server. So we'll go ahead and install that. It's usually best to install this next after you've installed Bitcoin Knots, because it takes a long time actually to index. It takes a couple of hours at least. So getting this one going after you've done the initial blockchain download, you're already sort of used to waiting a little bit, so you can get this one going as well. So you're going to click on configure and just save. I don't usually change anything in the settings for Electris. And then we can just click start. Okay, and you can see that it's starting to index the blocks. Alright, so while that's running, one other thing you probably are going to install is a block explorer. There's one called Mempool. So we'll go ahead and install that. Now we won't be able to configure that one. We can configure that one. It won't be able to run properly until Electrum REST server has finished indexing. So I won't go into that at this point. There's a number of other services on here that are really great. Let's see here. A good one is if you want to do a password management system. This is called Vault Warden. So this is a good one to install here. This you can link your browser to it with a plugin called Bitwarden. The instructions are all in here, but this is a really good service on Start9 that you can use. Okay, that's probably enough for this video. You can see that we've got our server up and running, and we started installing a few services. I'll do a separate video on Lightning specifically. I'll use this same server that we set up here for that. So be on the lookout for that. Another video that I'm planning to do is for how to do power backups, because one of the issues that, with any server, not just Start9, if Bitcoin Knots shuts down prematurely, a lot of times the blockchain can get corrupted. And so I want to show there's a way that you can use a power backup system to automatically shut down the server when the power cuts cleanly, so that you don't have the data corruption. So those are probably the next 2 videos that I'll be putting out related to Bitcoin here. So be on the lookout for those. One other thing, if you have any questions, you need some help, you run into problems during setup, just stop by my forum at paulscode.com. Once you request an account and I approve it, you can go on there and start a thread, or you can DM me. There's a chat feature. It looks like a conversation bubble up at the top. I also do one-on-one training with people, as well as troubleshooting and assistance. So if you need any help with something, just reach out to me on the forum, and we can set up a virtual meeting if you need, or we can talk on the forum itself if it's a problem that we can solve, with the thread. I also do custom builds. So if you want me to build a server for you, or just a PC, a general PC, or maybe you want to set up an ASIC Bitcoin miner, anything like that, just let me know what you want to do. I've sold a number of different devices, different people. I've built air gap computers, for example. So if you have any technical questions or any custom builds that you want me to do, just stop by the forum and we can talk about it. I'll see you in the next video.